Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Deb Smith, editor of Rug Hooking Magazine. If you're looking for the Mastering the Art of Punch Needle book launch event, you're in the right place, and it's time to get started. I'm the editor of the magazine, now working from my home in South Central Pennsylvania. I've been editor since 2009, and that's 11 long years now, and it's still the best job ever. Just imagine, if you can, artists and rug hookers send me their very best work, intriguing stories, and their fabulous projects. And I get to choose from all of that to create 5 issues each year for you. Like I said, what could be better? If you love rug hooking, you will love what we have to offer. We've been publishing since 1989, bringing you the best from the world of rug hooking. First, let's talk about a few housekeeping issues. If you get disconnected, you can reconnect using the same link. You will not be interrupting the talk. We're recording today's webinar, so if you have technical difficulties, don't worry. We'll send you a link and you can watch it later. And it will be posted on the Rug Hooking Magazine website very soon. We have the Q&A feature enabled on this event, so if you have a question for Simone, send it in. And if there's time, we'll answer a few of them at the end. If you'd like to order this book, visit the Rug Hooking Magazine website. For book club members, the price is $21.95. Visit the link on the screen. If you're not a book club member, consider joining now. So let's get started. Many of you know Simone Vojvoden from Ontario, Canada. We're pleased to announce that her first book is now available. This morning, we'll give you a taste of what you can see in the book, and I hope it convinces you that it's a must read and essential for your rug hooking and rug punching bookshelf. So without further ado, let's talk to Simone. Good morning, Simone.
Good morning.
How is it up there in Canada this morning?
It is sunny and snowy.
Sounds like Texas.
Yeah, I heard that.
Oh, we're thinking about you.
We have somebody.
Yes, we're all thinking about you, Texas. Well, here's the first question. Tell me what made you decide to write this book.
I had never actually considered writing a book before until you actually came and approached me and asked me if I'd be interested. And after giving it some thought, and I talked to my family, and I talked to Amy Oxford as well, and thought, you know what, I think it's something I should give a go to. So I was excited to be able to do it, and I thought it was really important to get the information out there and provide people with some good information to help them get started on their punch needle journey, or to continue the punch needle journey if they're already doing it.
What got you started into punch needle to begin with?
When my kids were little, we'd often go to the library, and I was perusing the bookshelves. I always looked in the craft and art sections for different things and different ideas. And there was actually a celebrations magazine there and book, and I took it out. I had never seen anything like it before. I looked through all those rugs, and they were so incredible and beautiful. And I thought, wow, I want to try this and do something with this. So I started to research different forms of rug hooking, and came across an old VHS video of Gloria Krause, who was a punch needle artist. And oh, she was just so exciting to watch, and the way she spoke about it and her passion for it, and then watching how the punch needle went through the backing and how her designs appeared. I thought, oh, that's definitely for me. But there wasn't a lot out there. There wasn't a lot of information at the time. There wasn't a lot of availability. Luckily, we came across somebody nearby who had some punch needle supplies available, and I was still kind of on the fence. I was excited about it, but I wasn't sure. And it was actually my husband who said, we need to actually do this. And so he and I went, and we bought some punch needles and some backing, and he made us some frames. We both made a rug. And from then it was just, that was it. And I know it's a pun that's used over and over, but I was completely hooked on it and just didn't look back.
So you do traditional rug hooking as well as punching?
Not very much. I do a tiny bit of traditional rug hooking, more so that I can understand problems or complications, so that I can help people when they come out to the studio or if I have students in my class that has questions that I can answer for them. But other than that, punching. All my rugs are punched.
What's your favorite part of punching?
Oh, I love the history of it and the connection to that history as you're working on it. It's been around for a long, long time. And then there's this rhythm of punching. The punch needle makes this rhythm in the backing, and you just watch the colors flow in, and it kind of feels like you're painting, but with wool. And that's just so exciting.
Do you teach a lot?
I do. I love teaching and sharing it. Normally, I travel all over the place to do teaching for different groups. And unfortunately, of course, 2020, we had the pandemic starting. And so all the workshops got canceled last year, which was very sad. I did teach one workshop, but the rest were all canceled. But I'm looking forward to 2021 and teaching on Zoom and being able to get back to it, because I miss being in the classroom with everybody.
The book that you just finished writing has lots and lots of step-by-step instructions. Why was that important to you?
Yeah, I really wanted this book to feel like you had an instructor, a friendly instructor, sitting right beside you, kind of guiding you along the way. And I think sometimes when you're learning something new, if there isn't step by step, it's easy to kind of get lost and not sure what to do next. So by breaking it down, making sure things were step by step, that there was lots of photos to help, that it would help people be successful and to feel confident to actually try it and to figure out what they need to be doing.
And you design all of your own patterns that you punch?
I do. I love.
What's your favorite part of designing?
I think my favorite part of designing is the process of getting an idea that's in my head and bringing it into fruition and making it actually into a pattern that will work for rug hooking or for punch needle on the paper. And I have so many ideas and thoughts and different ideas that come to me. And so I think that's about it. Most exciting part.
Do you dye your own yarn?
I do. I didn't at first. First I started off with just really cheap yarn that I found in a bag at Value Village, and started off with that. Then discovered that the results were just so much, I'll say, better using good rug yarns. But the colors that came from the mill just weren't doing it. I was used to painting and having a beautiful palette and being able to mix my own colors. And so being limited to what came from the mill just wasn't cutting it for me. And so Sherry from the rug line was really encouraging. And she just said, Simone, you need to just bite the bullet and start dyeing. And so I did. And it was so much fun. And just playing with the different colors and seeing what comes out of the dye pot. I'm a very haphazard dyer. I am not a formula dyer. Even I think this is it. I'm going to follow formulas and make it all exact. And then I don't. I put the dye in and I look and I tweak it and add a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And yeah.
That makes it hard to reproduce anything though, doesn't it?
No, a little bit. However, I think after playing for so long and doing so much that you learn what color will create what effect. So it might take a little bit more tweaking and a little bit more time to get the same or very close to the same, but you can get close again.
So tell us what makes a good punching yarn. What do you look for in a yarn before you choose it for one of your projects?
That depends on the project. If I am doing a piece that is going to go on the wall and I want lots of different texture, I can choose all kinds of fibers. It doesn't have to be a rug yarn. And we talk about that in the book a lot more. I go into details of what yarns work and what yarns don't, and tricks to make challenging yarns still work for you. So depends on the piece. And if it's a piece that's going to go on the floor or it's going to get a lot of use, then I do go to a rug yarn. And in a rug yarn, I look for something that's nice and sturdy, that's got a tight weave or a tight ply, sorry. And often they feel slightly coarser. They're not super soft and fluffy. They're kind of coarser, and you can just feel they're sturdy and strong. And that's what I look for.
You spend a lot of time on that in the book, and I found that particularly interesting. It's not something that you see discussed a whole lot, and I thought you did a really nice job with going through all the different characteristics of different kinds of yarns and what would work, and what, even if you thought something would not work, how you could make it work.
Yeah.
I thought a really good addition, and I think the readers will get a lot out of that in particular.
Thank you. I get asked that a lot, and I have people questioning a lot as to what they can use. And I thought, well, people are asking those questions, that those are the things that needed to be addressed in the book. So I'm glad that you found it that way.
Yeah. So what's your favorite backing for punch, and why?
I love monk's cloth. It needs to be monk's cloth that is made for rug hooking, though, because there are different monk's cloths out there. Some are made for Swedish weaving. I think some are made for some other kinds of craft that are not good monk's cloths for punching. So make sure that the monk's cloth is one that is made for rug hooking. And it's my favorite one to punch on. It's light, first of all, white, because white cotton, so that the design shows up beautifully on it. Then it's stretchy, and the stretchiness I know is one of the things that some traditional hookers find challenging with monk's cloth, but it's one of the features that makes it perfect for punching, because that stretchiness in the backing helps to lock your loops in as you're punching along, and it makes the punch needle easier to go through, and then grabs those loops and holds it all in place beautifully for you. So, but you can punch on linen. You can punch on wool fabric. You can punch on a variety of different things. And again, that's in the book, but yeah, monk's cloth is definitely my preferred go-to backing.
Yes, you have a nice punching on wool project in the book. That's very sweet. It's quite nice. I was glad to see that. Letting people know that it doesn't have to be just monk's cloth. It doesn't have to be just linen. You know, use your imagination and try it. Maybe it'll work.
Exactly. That's half of this, right? It's an evolving art, and people are trying different things. And, you know, once you've learned the basics and you've learned, and especially if you've practiced, you know, when you're starting out, it's good to have the tried and true. But once you've got that set, it's really exciting to experiment and to try different things, and to see different projects being made, and utilizing different things, either out of necessity, because sometimes people don't have access easily to what they what would be, you know, in terms of traditional materials to be using, or just for creative purposes to find something different to use.
And speaking of the projects, how did you determine what kinds of projects to include in the book? How did you pick the themes? I know that you often have animals and country themes, and I'm guessing you live in the country. So tell us a little bit about how you chose your projects.
So for the projects in the book, I wanted them to progressively walk somebody through. Sorry, let me start that sentence again. I wanted to walk people through the steps of learning to punch. I wanted them to start off very simple and straightforward, where the person could focus on the method of punching as opposed to what the design was, and really build up their confidence and their skills, and then have the projects gradually add new techniques and new challenges and new skills, so that the person could build on their repertoire of what they know with punching. And a variety of things to speak to different people. You know, room to take them and kind of make them their own as well, or designs that would work well to change different colors and have them work for somebody that way, because everybody has a different color palette that they lean to or that they enjoy. So I wanted them to be flexible that way as well. So yeah, it was a range of skills, and then also adaptability for people.
Well, where do you get your inspirations? Do rug designs just come to you all of a sudden, or do you have to work at it? I guess the real question is, what is your creative process in designing patterns? You must start with an idea, but then what?
Well, sometimes I start with an idea. I keep a notebook by the bedside table. I have been known to, my poor husband, wake up in the middle of the night with a moment because an idea just popped into my head at night, and kind of scribble it down in the dark so that it's there in the morning. Sometimes it's more of a trying, especially if it's for teaching purposes. I know the technique I want to teach, so I try to think of a design that will showcase that technique properly. The process, often it starts off with the thoughts or the ideas, and then letting them percolate in my mind for a while. Sometimes I have to kind of stew around in there for a bit. And then it's often just some scribbles on a piece of paper. When it's my own rugs, often that's how the design goes onto the monk's cloth, is a bunch of scribbles. And I'll show it to my kids and they'll say, I don't even know what that is. Of course, when it's a pattern that's being done as a pattern to go off to other people, I make sure it's super clear and done properly. So yeah, it evolves, and I'll just keep working on it until it feels right and it feels good. And then sometimes the ideas come from other people. I'll have somebody, message me or phone and ask, they have an idea, and when I help them bring that into fruition. And so same thing, the process is kind of similar, but I have to take I'll ask them a bunch of questions, or I'll ask them to send me inspirational things that will help me to take their idea and kind of adapt into my own thoughts as well, and form a design from that.
Have you always been an artist? Are you formally trained?
Yes, I have been an artist right from the beginning. When I was little, I used to, paint pictures and drawings, and I had more confidence then than I do now. I think I went door to door for a while trying to sell at 6 years old, I went to school for art. I did not complete my degree. I hated being in the city. I'm a country girl through and through, and living in the city for school just wasn't my cup of tea. But so yes, I do have some formal training, and I've always been an artist. And this was just such an exciting avenue to go down, because it was able to combine things I loved. I loved fiber and embroidery, and being able to take that and transfer, painting as well, but into fiber art, and combine those two.
So let's talk about color planning, which is something that I find particularly difficult. I naturally tend toward that muddy middle of medium values. Any advice for me and the rest of us on that? What are your tricks for color planning?
Well, Deb, that's a really, really common thing. You're not alone in that at all. Middle ground or gravitating to the same pattern or palette over and over is a very common thing. When tricks for color planning, I would say always make sure that you push your range in value of color. So include the colors that you love, but make sure that some of them are the really deeper, darker of the values, and some are light, and that you have that full range. It's not all sitting in the middle. And then one of the tricks I like to do is I'll take my yarns that I think are going to go in my piece, and I'll pile them together, and I'll kind of arrange them in a way that, I've got a large amount, and then maybe a teeny bit of the one color, and I'll have it peeking through. So you can see in quantities of what they'll be in the rug. And that helps too, because if you're going to have a really light value, and it's only going to be a tiny amount of it in the rug, if you're looking at it when it skeins and the whole skein is there, it's going to throw off what it will look like in the end result. So I try to arrange it so that it's kind of in the quantities there. And then I squint my eyes at it. And by squinting and making things blurry also helps to kind of just see the color and see what's working. And then play. Don't be afraid don't stop there. Go and grab some other colors and add them in, and even colors that you don't like, or you think, oh, that's really weird, that's not going to work, and put them in. And you never know, suddenly you'll bring a color in, and suddenly all the other colors kind of, Amy described it as singing, and they kind of go this moment, and you've hit it right. And that's just so exciting when you get to that moment. And then be open to change. I think that's the next step. So when you've got it to that point and you think it's all planned out and perfect, sometimes even at that stage, when you start working on your rug, you'll be working along and going, oh, this is not working. Get some more of the other colors in around it first. But if it's still not working for you, it's so easy to change it. Pull it out, pop in a new color and play around with it and see, and it will come together.
What is your favorite type of rug to work on?
For my own use, I like
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So I love animals. So my favorite motifs are animal motifs. I like whimsical things. And I also like rugs that will challenge. So if somebody says that something can't be done, I usually try to find out a way to make it be done. And yeah, so that's one of the things that I like. I like rugs that are going to challenge me, that will push me beyond what my comfort zone is. And occasionally it's nice to just change it up too and do something that's simple and just has pleasure in the process as well. So I play around with different.
Yes, I've seen some of your rugs and they definitely are challenging rugs. So you're good there. What is your favorite punch size to work with?
Number 10, if I am using heavy wool. So it will depend on the rug. So a number 10 regular is definitely my favorite needle for chunkier weight yarns. If it's a design that's using finer yarns, more suiting to it, then either a 13 or 14 are my favorites. I go back and forth between them, and it just depends on the rug and the design.
Okay, so Simone, you're going to demonstrate a little bit for us?
Yes. Give me 1 second here, switch my camera around.
Okay. While Simone's getting ready to roll, we'll see what she has to show us. I think she's going to show us some basic punching for those newbies in the audience who have never tried it before. And then she's going to demonstrate the beading stitch, which is very fun.
That's right. Okay. So I think we can see things clearly here. Sorry, 1 second. All right. Okay, so of course we need to know how to use the punch needle before we can get on to doing the beading stitch. Here I've got a number 10 punch. The number is on the end of the punch needle by the metal tip. And this one's a number 10. And to thread it, it's super easy. I'm going to take my nice chunky rug wool here, and I'm just going to give the end of it a little twist to make sure it's nice and tight. And I'm going to take this tip and I'm going to feed it through the eye on the punch needle. So you can see that there, through the eye on the punch needle from the side that has the slot in it towards the side that does not. So here I'm taking this and I'm going to feed it through there. I'm going to pinch it on the back and I'm going to pull it through. So I've got a nice long tail. Then I am going to line up that yarn along the slot or the channel that's in the handle of the punch needle. And I'm going to line it up there, and you don't have to try to force it down. All you're going to do is line it up and pull backwards, and you'll see that it pops down in there. And when it's popped down, I'm just going to pull it back the rest of the way so this long tail is nice and short, and we're good to go. If you're pulling it back and you feel kind of some stickiness happening in there, just grab the other side, pull it forward and slide it back again until you can feel that it's traveling smoothly through the punch needle. And then that's all we need to do to be ready to punch. So very easy to thread and to change your colors around. So we don't wait. Oh, sorry.
Here's a question. How do you evaluate how much yarn you need? Before you get started, you have to have an idea of how much you're going to use. How do you answer that question?
You do. So there's different methods, and I talk about them in the book. But the easiest and quickest method is what I call the hand method. And your hand either makes, between a 9 and 10 inch circle. Of course, it depends on the size of your hands. And 1 4-ounce skein of wool, on average, will do 1 hand's circle's amount of space on the rug. If you're using a fine yarn and a 14 punch needle, it's going to go further because a 14 makes teeny tiny loop, so it's going to use less yarn. But if you're using an 8, it's actually going to go slightly less because an 8 makes a great big 1/2 inch loop, so you're going to use up more yarn. But on average, 1 hand is 1 skein of wool, 4-ounce skein of wool. And so what I'll do is I'll go around my piece and I will lay it over the top of the design and kind of estimate that, you know, this area that's got this color is about a half a hand's worth. So it's half a skein's worth. And I've got that color over here. And that's how I'll work it, going around, judging it there. And it's surprisingly accurate. Of course, always err on the side of caution and have a little bit more than what you think you're going to need, because running out is awful. And just save yourself that stress. And those leftover bits can always be used in other projects. So we always go that way, being cautious. But yeah, that's it. Super simple. So hand method, hand on the pattern, and then just judge what areas are covering of your hand and equaling it out into skeins of yarn. Does that answer the question all right?
Sounds good to me.
All right. So back to the punch needle. I've got my punch needle threaded. In order to not waste yarn, we've just made a teeny tiny little tail here on the end. And I'm going to make sure that my yarn is coming over the back of my hand, that it's nice and loose. There's no tension on it. And it's just coming directly from the ball. We don't have to cut it into tiny pieces. And just allow it to trail along. So then we're going to take it and we're going to, wherever we want to start on our piece of monk's cloth, we are going to take the needle tip and push it all the way down. We want to make sure that we always punch all the way down until that wood needle or wood handle touches the backing, and it can't go any further. And that is key, always making sure that that needle goes all the way down into the backing. Then we're going to lift our needle up, and I'm just going to skim it forward and go down again. And when I'm doing that skimming, I am making sure that I'm not lifting my needle tip up too high. If I come way up above, I'll actually pull the loop out, the previous loop out. So I'm just making sure that that needle tip is skimming the surface and going down again. And we just punch along like so. And you don't have to go in a straight line. You can turn and go different directions. And if you are making a single line, you want to aim to be having, or a border, you want to aim to have about 6 stitches. Whoops. See, that's what we want to avoid. We want to make sure it's always nice and loose. You want to aim to have about 6 stitches per inch. When I've reached my spot that I want to stop, there's different methods to stopping. I'll just show one of the quick ones. We're going to put our finger on there, pull our needle up out of the way, snip it off, and we're going to tuck that little tail down through to the other side. And that's because this side here is actually the back of the piece. And we're always working from the back side. And this side here is the front with all the loops. And we want our tails, just like in traditional rug hooking, how our tails are on the same side as our loops. We want the tails of the yarn to be on the same side of our loop as well. Oh, and one of the other important things that I didn't mention as I was doing that, we also want to make sure that that channel is facing whatever direction we are punching. So as I punched along here, that channel was facing this way. When I turned the corner, while my needle was down in the backing, I just turned it so that channel was facing the new direction and carried on. So that needle was always facing the direction needed to go in. For a single line or an outline, we are aiming to have 6 stitches per inch. And again, this is for the heavy rug yarn. And so what we're going to do is use a stitch gauge, and you can either get one. They actually, if you buy the box set of an Oxford punch needle, it comes with one. I have one on my website that you can print off. There's one in the book that you can print out, or you can just make one by simply taking a piece of card and cutting a 1-inch square out of it. And you lay it over the top, and you're going to count your stitches. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is a perfect outline stitch. If I'm going to be filling in an area, so I've already done the outlines and now I'm filling in the motif, and you're going to aim to have between 4 and 5 stitches per inch. And here you can see, count in the window, 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. So this is perfect for filling in. If you do it and you have 5 stitches in one area, don't go back and pull it out. You don't have to be super, super uptight about it. That's just kind of what you're aiming for. So that's your general guideline. Every once in a while, stop, grab your stitch gauge, and just double check that that's what you're getting as you're punching. As you go around a corner, it's going to change the number of stitches because you now have a radius. So you're going to have slightly more stitches within your window than you would if it was a straight line. And you just compensate for that as you work. If it's a finer yarn, so here's a finer yarn compared to my thicker. You see the difference there. If it's a finer yarn and you're using a finer punch needle, your stitches are actually going to be much closer together. And again, I talk about that more in the book as to making sure that you get the right stitch length plus the stitch spacing between the rows, because that's also an important factor in making sure that it's filling out nicely on the other side for you. But for today, we're sticking with the regular needle. So here I've got my regular stitches all put in place. We have the right stitch length. If I've made a big mistake and there's, really, really off, it's very simple to just pull it back and trim it through. I'm going to pull this out now so we can shift over and I can show the beading stitch for you. So this is one of my favorite things about punch needle. If you make a mistake, you can just pull it back out and scratch over it, and nobody needs to ever know that there was a mistake there. And you can start again and do something new. Okay, so was there any questions about that, or are we good? All right. So for the beading stitch, here's a little example here. I just did a tiny little piece. The beading stitch is a pretty little stitch that creates this lovely little edge that looks like a series of beads. And here I have it going around the edge of this little piece here. And I didn't finish the back of it because I wanted to be able to show you what the beading stitch looks like from the working side. So I'll just peel that back so you can see. There's the beading stitch from the working side. So it actually kind of looks like two rows of punching that have just been squished in together side by side. An important thing for the beading stitch is to make sure you choose two yarns that have high contrast to one another. So here I've got this pink in kind of a medium value, and I have a very dark navy blue. And so those two are going to stand out nicely. White and black, of course, looks great. Beautiful checkerboard, anything like that, as long as you've got a nice contrast between them so that you get the most bang for your buck out of doing the work of a beading stitch. So, whoops, to do the beading stitch, I'm going to go along here. Again, shorten up my little tail. I'm going to get a good spot, punch down, and I'm going to reach underneath my frame with my hand, and I'm just going to pull that little tail. Everybody can see the little tail right there. I'm going to pull it down so it's down on the other side. I can either do it by reaching under, or there's something called a thumb trick, which I won't go into today, but again, that thumb trick is in the book, and that will also get your tail through to the front side easily without having to mess around and poke it down after. So my tail's to the other side, and I'm ready to start for the beading stitch. And to do that, I'm actually going to make my stitches double the length of what they normally would be. So I'm making extra long stitches. And I'm not actually counting holes in the backing. I am just going by the feel of it. And again, that's one of the special things about punching. You don't want to be tied down to sitting closely and trying to count holes and figuring out where you're going. You want to be able to just play and put the yarn in. So practicing with that stitch gauge gives you kind of that freedom that you're not worrying about looking at the holes. So I'm going along, I'm punching and making these really nice long stitches. Now let's have a look at what it looks like on the other side. And we should see that it's gappy. So this would not be good if this was going to be the only line of stitching I had here, if it was normal, because there's these big gaps between the rows. But that's perfect for the beading stitch because we're going to stop this color here and switch over to our other color. You could either, you don't have to have a second punch needle. Of course, you could just rethread your first punch needle. And I'm going to take this second color and I'm going to nestle it in right beside, which way is better for the camera? This way. I'm going to nestle it right in beside that halfway mark of that first stitch. And I'm going to kind of shove that first stitch just to the side a little bit. See if I can get it closer. Yes. I'm going to shove that stitch just to the side a little bit, nestle my needle so it's kind of going underneath it, at the halfway mark, and I'm going to go down, pull that tail through the other side. And I'm going to carry along that way. Just going at that halfway mark, tucking that first stitch aside and popping it underneath. And we're just going to carry on. There we go. So now I have 2 rows right side by side like so. And let's have a look on the other side. So here is my finished side there. And we've got, just give them a little tweak, we've got our beading stitch. Now, they are a little higgledy-piggledy right here. I didn't make the first row quite long enough. So you can either just arrange it with your fingers like so, or when I go the next one, I'm going to actually go just slightly longer so that they line up nicely on the next row. And once I get the other rows of stitches in beside them of a different color, that will also help to hold it all in place. But you get this lovely alternating pattern happening with the stitches. Now, I've done this one in a straight line. You don't have to always do it in a straight line though. You can do a beading stitch in a curve. And of course, you want to take into account that as you're going around a curve that you need to change your stitches just slightly. So you're just aiming for consistency there. This time I'm using the pink first. I'm going to stop there. So now we have the pink carrying on, and we're going to go and do our second color of the navy blue. And so same thing. This is where I'm going to start. I'm going to go to the halfway mark of this stitch and nestle it underneath. Come up and halfway mark. Oh, that one wasn't right. That one, I felt it slide into the hole that the other one was in. So we just pull it back, tighten my yarn back up, and we aim for that halfway point, and in we go.
Here's a question for you, Simone, pretty basic question. Yep. If you can pull the yarn out that easily, can't that also happen to your project after you complete it? What keeps everything together?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yes, it comes out very easily here because I only have a tiny bit of yarn in the backing. Once you get all your loops in and it's all in place, there's a lot of tension that goes onto that backing, and that tension is holding everything in place. And also, as you're punching, sometimes as you're punching more and more rows, or you can go higgledy-piggledy or however you want to punch it, but as there's more and more loops going in, some of the new loops will catch some of the fibers of the old loops and actually helps to anchor things in place. So once your rug is all punched, all that tension, all those fibers start to meld together and it holds it all in. And it's actually really difficult. Here's a little piece here. It's actually really difficult to pull out loops. I don't know if you can see me tugging on that there. They're really secure. They hold in. And there's no need to put any glue on there or anything like that. Just use it as it is and leave it with the loops there. The back is always a little bit more susceptible than the front is to being pulled, but even the back, once all your loops are in place, becomes very secure. So we're just tucking those in like so. So now I've gone all the way around the circle there. I'm going to cut this one off, and we're going to flip it over and have a look. And there we go. There's our little beading stitch. Going on around.
Turned out nicely.
Thank you. And then what we'd do, we normally would wait until we had some other yarns in place around it. But at the end, what we would do is go along, and we have all these little tails sticking up. We would go and trim them off. And we're not going to cut them short. We're going to cut them level with the loops. that are in place. And then that allows it to sit nicely.
Yes,
So,
I see.
beading stitch. There we go.
Okay, Simone, can you tell us some more about yourself? Do you have kids? Are they creative?
I sure can, but I did see a question just come up on the feed. Someone was asking about the gripper frame. I caught it out the corner of my eye. What I'm using today is a gripper frame. And, oh, I think I'm gone. I was going to show you, but I think my video is gone. That's okay. I am using a gripper frame. You can use a hoop that's got a locking lip, although that can be a little bit more challenging if it's a big rug. I tend to use a smaller gripper frame, and I do great big rugs even on a small gripper frame. So I hope that answers that person's question that came through there. All right, 1 second. Let me switch my camera over. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. Am I back?
You're back.
Okay.
You have kids? You're building a house? How do you do it all? You must be incredibly organized.
Well, my creative brain doesn't like to stay organized very easily. Lists were always my way of staying on track. Lots and lots and lots of lists all over the place. And yeah, then we added some more projects to the normal busyness of day-to-day life. We just in the end stages of building our own house, and of course writing the book. And my lists haven't always been quite as successful keeping me on track as they used to be. I'm very grateful for people's patience with me, as there's been some delays on helping people out, but yeah, lists are definitely the key for helping. And I'm looking forward to wrapping up, getting back on track.
Well, life's been pretty complicated for everybody these days, so yeah.
It sure has, and I think giving ourselves some grace in that is an important thing, right? We just need to kind of one at a time.
Do you make custom designs for people? I think you mentioned earlier that you do. If I give you a picture of my dog or cat or husband or house, can you make it into a pattern for me? Do you like doing that?
Yes, I certainly can do that. And I do enjoy it for the most part. Occasionally there's a design that just doesn't speak to me, but for the most part, I really enjoy making custom designs for people. And taking kind of, as I said, my favorite is to take when they just have a general idea and then being able to turn it into my own interpretation and my own drawing. But I will work from a photograph as well. Like I just finished one the other day. Somebody wanted one of their dog, and so yeah, I'll do that. I can work that way and make custom designs.
Here's another question. A viewer asked, I'm working on a pattern of yours, but I'm nervous. What if it isn't the same as when you punch it or how you envisioned it? Is it hard for you to see your designs punched or hooked by other people?
Oh, don't be nervous. Just go for it. One of the great pleasures of producing patterns, first of all, I have more ideas in my mind than I could ever hook or punch myself. So it's so exciting to do them, put them out to the world, know that other people love them enough to buy them and to then want to turn them into their own designs and work on them themselves. And I love seeing the interpretations that people have of them. And even if they do it similar to mine, it's a different hand. And so there'll always be a different feeling to it. And sometimes they make changes to personalize it a little bit to themselves and alter it just slightly. And I love it. I love it. It makes it a collaborative effort. It's a collaborative artwork. You know, it was my original artwork was designing the design, but then it goes off into the world, and it's just so exciting to see how somebody approaches it and their own spin on it. And yeah, I love it when I get a photo, you know, an email from somebody, or they bring the rug to show me, and seeing the different changes and what they've done and how they're run. Even if they've done it exactly, it's still going to look a little bit different. And I love it. Yeah. So never hesitate. Go for it.
So what's your best advice for a beginning puncher? It all looks pretty intimidating. What do you tell people to help them relax and enjoy it?
I think that's the key right there is relax. It's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay for it to not be perfect right away. Punch needle is incredibly forgiving. As you saw, when there's a problem, you can pull it out and change it pretty easily. And you don't always even want to do that. It's all right if it's not perfect. It's a handmade piece, and having some little idiosyncrasies in there and things that aren't exactly right is part of the beauty of it. So it's okay. Just relax, enjoy the process, and it comes with time. Just, you know, the more you do it, the more confident you get, and the simpler it becomes. So I still keep my first piece. I think I might be sitting on it. Yeah, I am. I still keep my first piece that I ever made. I keep it handy in the studio. I often take it with me when I'm teaching, especially for beginners, so I can show them that, you know, it's got lots of problems. There's lots of mistakes in it, and it's not perfect by any means, but it's okay. I love it. It stood up the test of time. It's been sat on for years and years and years, and it's still okay. So yeah, I think that's the key. Just go for it.
Is it expensive? Do I need all the tools, or can I get by with just a few? And
Right.
if you need just a few, what would those few be?
So, is it expensive? Having a few really good quality tools and a few good quality materials can make a very big difference in the end result of your piece and your pleasure in working with it. Saying that, you don't need to have all the gizmos and gadgets. You can stick with very simple items. So get a good punch needle. I think that's really important. There's some real cheapy ones out there, and they're not fun to work with. So invest in a good punch needle. You don't need to have all of them. One is fine for starting out. And some good backing is the next thing, because a bad backing just, oh, it's so frustrating to work with. So invest in a good punch needle, some good backing. And after that, you know, you can really make do. You can get a gripper frame, which are on the pricier side, but they are worth every penny because they do make it so easy to move your rug around. But it's not a necessity. For the first few years, I used a very simple carpet tack frame that we made for, I think it ended up costing us around $10 or $12 to make it total. And I had a whole series of those in different sizes, and you know, they work. They do the job. Not as nice as a gripper, but it does the work properly for you. So yeah, you don't have to make it really expensive. It can be a reasonable thing to start off with. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, what about your patterns? Are they only good for a punch needle, or are they good for basic traditional rug hooking also?
They are good for both. And I do patterns on both monk's cloth and linen. And yeah, you can use them for either punch needle or traditional rug hooking. The only thing is some patterns have a direction to them. And so that's a pattern that has wording on it, let's say. And then it's important to specify to me that you are going to either punch it or traditionally hook it. Because if you're punching it, I need to make sure that the lettering goes on backwards. Because when we punch from the back. The side that the design is on needs to be a mirror image, because the opposite side, of course, was the finished side, and that's going to be the reverse of whatever the picture looks like. So if it says, you know, the example I've given, I've heard long ago, and I can't remember who the story was originally from, but they had made a Santa rug and it said ho, ho, ho on it. And it was a pattern that was meant for traditional rug hooking. They punched it because they wanted it done quickly. And if this is you, please email me, because I can never remember who it was. But anyways, they punched it, ho, 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 all done nice and quick. They were super happy with it. They turned it over, and of course the finished side said, oh. On the other side. I thought that was so funny and sweet. So yes, that's the only thing that matters, is if it's going to be punched and it has something that's directional in it, that we put it on so that that directional item is in reverse. Otherwise, go for it. Hook it or punch it. Either way, doesn't matter. It's kind of a fun way to tell, even with old rugs, if you knew what the original design was. There's one Blue Notes pattern. It's the 3 bears marching along, holding their porridge. And there's ones that have been punched and it's going one direction. And if someone's hooked that same design, the 3 bears, of course, going the other direction. And that's kind of neat to see.
Yeah, that's fun. So you have time for some questions, Simone?
I do.
Yeah, okay. So as we gather some questions from our viewers, I'll tell you about some special offers that we have going on. Today, we have an introductory offer for a subscription to Rug Hooking Magazine for new subscribers, $19.95 for 5 issues, available to those watching today. Use the code PUNCH21 that you see on the screen. And to purchase this book at the best price, be sure to join the book club. To join online, go to the link on the screen. And remember to visit the Rug Hooking website frequently to take advantage of all of our special deals. We'd love to have you all in the Rug Hooking Magazine family. And there's more. If you are currently a member of the book club, you can purchase extra copies of this book for $19.95. Special for you guys viewing today. Use the promo code on the screen. If you're not in the book club, here's a special offer just for you for watching today. You can purchase Mastering the Art for $24.95, which is $3 less than the cover price. Use the promo code that you see there. And as a special thank you for joining us today, we'll be giving away a copy of Mastering the Art. Cross your fingers, maybe you'll be the lucky winner. So now, questions for Simone. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
This question is about finishing. Martha says, I watched your YouTube video about how to finish with the herringbone stitch. How do you do the herringbone stitch around the corners on a rectangular rugs? I cannot make it work.
I'm so sorry. You can't make it work. I haven't figured it out yet. If I do, I will post a new video. Yeah, herringbone is a special, for those who don't know what it is, it's a type of whipping where you're wrapping the edge and you're wrapping it in this interesting figure 8 pattern, and it creates a unique design on the edge of the rug. And it is best suited to round rugs. Now, if you have a rectangle rug that you really want to do the herringbone finish on, my recommendation is to tackle it in one of two ways. The first is to regularly whip the corner piece just a little ways into the 2 sides. Then do the herringbone along the edge so that you cover up that first start of the regular whipping and it carries on the corner. You will see that transition into the corner, but it's a way to at least, incorporate the herringbone along the edge. The other way is to round the corners of your rectangular rug off. So pull out your punching, or if you haven't finished punching it yet or hooking it, round those corners so that it is a rectangular rug, but with rounded edges. And then the herringbone can continue on and around those corners.
Ah, good idea. Yeah. Okay, Leslie asks, does Simone have any tips and tricks for combining rug hooking and needle punch on the same piece? Does it matter which is done first?
Yeah, I do. No, it does not matter which one you do first. My tips or tricks to doing it are either, you can go about it 2 different ways. The first way is to put your design on your backing both sides. The trick is to make sure that they are lined up perfectly, so that you don't have the design drawn on cockeyed from the other side. You want to make sure that they are lined up perfectly on both sides, and then that way you can go back and forth and punch and hook. The other way to go about it is to put your design just on one side and either do all the punching first or all the hooking first, and then flip it over and you will see the negative space that's left, and you'll fill that in with either the punching or the hooking. And it becomes more clear as to where you need to put the other color in. Yeah.
Okay, do you finish your edges for your punch pieces like you do for rug hooking by binding with wool yarn? How's it done? Do you fold the monk's cloth forward and then whip, or do you have another favorite method?
The traditional way to finish a punch rug is really simple. It's actually just to hem that edge under without any rug binding, without anything else or rug tape on it. We just hem that edge under. We fold it under twice so that the raw edge is protected. And in the book, there's really clear step-by-step photographs for both a round rug and a rectangle rug to do this. And it creates this tidy little border edge, just like so. This is a small piece, so I did a very tiny one. If it was a bigger rug, I don't know if you can see this. Yeah, you can. There's a bigger edge here. So this is the traditional way. We've just hemming it under. Super simple, very quick to do. So all those people that hate to do the finishing, they hook these gorgeous rugs or punch these gorgeous rugs, and then they hate to finish it, so they roll it up and stick it under their bed. This is the way to do it. And if anybody ever questions it, you can just say it's the traditional way to finish a punch piece, because it is really fast. So a lot of my pieces I finish that way. However, sometimes there's a rug that is enhanced by another style of finishing. For an example, my horse rug, I don't know if anybody saw that one before. It, oh, here. It has a herringbone edge, a whipped edge. It's not going to show up in the camera very well. But I decided to have that edge carry on from the horse's lead rope and all the way around. So it really set the design off, and it needed that edge put on it. So that's my suggestion. Go either what will get it done. So if hemming it under is what gets it done, then go for that one. If you like to enhance your piece and you want to do something different, sometimes just that hemming is what it needs, and it finishes it beautifully, and it doesn't need any enhancement from whipping. And then other designs do need something a little bit more. And there's lots of methods. There's crocheted edge and traditional, whipping where we roll it forward and just whip the yarn around, the herringbone, sewing fabric strips or braided edges. And those are touched on in the book as well.
Here's a question for you. Can you briefly describe the differences between the needles along the line of how fine the needle is itself and the length of the needle? How does that create the difference? What would your recommendation be for a beginner who wants to do a more picture type project?
That's a great question. So in the Oxford punch needles, there are 8 different needles. There are 5 which are considered regular needles. And there are 5 that are considered fine needles and 3 that are considered regular needles. And fine or regular denotes the width of the needle tip and the weight of the yarn it will take. So a regular needle is thicker like this, and it takes the chunky weight yarns. A fine needle, a fine needle is a much narrower tip, and it will take the finer yarns. And a fine needle, an easy way to tell really quickly, a fine needle also has this little eyelet, metal eye or screw eye on the end of the handle. So that's a quick way to tell, and the regular needle does not. So fine needle for fine yarns, that's worsted weight yarns or thinner, and a regular needle for heavier yarns. Or you can also punch with wool strips. It doesn't have to be yarn. So wool fabric strips you can cut and you can punch with them. And a number 6 cut, or they say an 8, but I like 6 the best, goes beautifully through a regular punch needle. Then the punch needles have numbers on them. And again, we talked about that briefly in the demo, that there's a little number stamped in the end by the needle tip. And it will say, if it's a regular needle, it will say either 8, 9, or 10. And it was a 9, not a 6, because there isn't a 6. So those who always question, I don't know if I have a 6 or a 9, it is a 9. And that denotes the height of the loop that needle is going to make. An 8 is the biggest one. It makes a great big 1/2 inch loop. And then the regular needle, a number 10, I've got one here. A number 10 makes a little 1/4 inch loop, so it's a little bit shorter. And so that's the difference between those ones. The fine needles start really short. They started at 14, and it makes a teeny tiny little loop that almost looks like tapestry when you punch with it. And that fine needle comes in a 14 or 13. They're both small. Sometimes you'll hear them being referred to as the mini, which is the 14, and the mini with heels, because like it has little high heels on it. It's just a little smidgen taller than this one. Then they also come in the 10, 9, and 8. So if you want to hook a piece that's all the same height, but you want to use thick yarn and thin yarn in it, you could have 2 number 10s. The one regular one for heavy yarns and the one fine one for fine yarns, and then the loop height will all be the same at the end. As far as recommending for a beginner, I think that depends on you. And like go over, I have like a whole series of questions in the book as to, you know, what do you want to do and what do you have on hand as to which needle you might want to have. If you're looking at more detailed designs where you have a lot of fine detail, then go with the finer needle. It's a little bit easier. Imagine painting with a big, thick brush, but trying to get fine details. It's harder. Whereas we have a fine tip, sorry, one second. If you have a fine tip paintbrush, you're going to be able to get finer details in there. I breathed in some wool dust. So, and then also look at what you have on hand as well. If you have a nice big supply of knitting yarns that are mostly finer yarns, then you might as well utilize that and go with a finer needle. If you have a lot of chunky weight yarns, then go with a thicker needle. And if your pieces are going to go on the floor, you also might want to consider a thicker needle, just because it's a little bit more robust. Although I do put fine projects on the floor as well, as long as I've used a good rug yarn for them.
Here's a design question. For punch needlework, is it typical to outline and fill?
Yes. So not all the time, as with a lot of things, there's rules and then there's times to break the rules. But in general, what we often do is go around the outside of a motif and then fill that area in. And it doesn't always have to be a different color. We don't have to make it like a comic book and outline and, you know, in black and then fill in. It can be the same color. But yeah, that's the general way we tackle things. We also tend to do tiny designs first. So the tiniest part of the motif first. So let's say I'm doing a snowman and here's his body and he's got his little buttons. We would want to punch those buttons first and then do the area around it. And that will ensure that we don't lose the placement for where those buttons are going to go.
Another one, are you, because you punch from the back, do you put the pattern on the back too?
Yes. So whatever side your pattern is drawn on. So we've got this piece, and if you were hooking it, this where the pattern's drawn would be the front. And in punching, we're going to put it on our back, on our frame just the same way. So this is facing us and we can see it, but this will automatically become the back of the rug when it's done, and the other side will become the front. And that's where making sure if it's something directional that we reverse it becomes important.
I saw a question. Okay, is this the same technique used with embroidery thread punch needle?
The techniques are really similar. There are some slight differences, but the process is very similar. You're using a needle that is pushing a fiber through a backing, and then the pressure in the backing holds those loops in place. So the concept is the same. There's just some tweaks to spacing and that kind of thing that obviously takes place because the embroidery punch is on a much finer scale.
Here's a good question. When punching a rug larger than your frame, how do you keep the grippers from pulling out your yarn?
I find, providing that I have used a good rug yarn and that I am making sure that I am punching the right number of loops per square inch, again, by using that stitch gauge or by practicing if it's the finer yarns, that they don't pull out. I just usually put my loops right on top of my gripper. I do trim my tails first because those tails will snag, but the loops themselves tend to not. There is a trick for getting it on and off though. You want to make sure that when you put it on the frame, I always lay the already punched part on the gripper first and gently hold that down. Then I pull the backing tight over the grippers to secure it in place and to stretch it tight. When I go to take it off, I go the opposite, and the unpunched part, it's like a tongue twister, gets released first. I pull that off and release it, and that takes the tension off the loops. And then we always roll the already punched part gently off those grippers in the direction those grippers are going. We don't just pull up, and that prevents the loops from getting snagged. Occasionally, if we're working with a more delicate fiber, you can still land up with a little bit of snagging happening. And in those cases, either using a little bit of, name will come to me, one second, Glad press and seal on your loops will help to protect them. Or my favorite trick is to take the leg of pantyhose and you cut the leg off the pantyhose, you lay it over your gripper first, and then you put your loops on it. and that will also help and protect them. And then when you pull it off, you pull that pantyhose up with it, and it just eases the loops off of your gripper strips. And again, step-by-step instructions on moving your rug and taking it on and off in the book to help you.
Yeah.
Remember
Have you
that.
ever punched with wool strips, like size 6 or 8 cuts?
Yeah. So this piece here, I don't know if we can see. I thought that'd be a question because it's a question I got asked a lot. So I had this rug handy. I don't know if you can see very well, but the background here, this is all punched with wool strips. And then these parts were done with wool yarns. And in the middle part, it's a big rug, so I'm not gonna hold the whole thing up. But in the middle, I have even finer strips. I have really strong, kind of well felted wool fabric strips that were 3 cut that I did with a fine needle, and that's in the center of it. So yeah, you can use wool strips in it. There are a few tricks to using that. I won't go into it now, but again, that's in the book to make those wool strips work and allow you to have success punching with those. And it's fun to change it up and add those different textures in there.
Do you, excuse me, do you ever use rug warp as your backing?
I don't. I have used it just to make sure that it works. I just have a good supply of monk's cloth, but you can punch on rug warp. Yep. Especially with the thick needle. The fine needle goes through too. It depends on your rug warp, I think. Some of them are a little bit thicker or tighter hole than others, and so you just want to try. But yeah, for the most part, rug warp seems to work quite well.
How close do you punch the second row to the first row?
That will depend on your weight of yarn. If you are using the regular yarn, the regular needle with heavyweight yarn, it lands up usually being about 2 to 3 rows of backing over. And the trick to doing it, I'm trying to see if I've got something to give an example. I don't at the moment. The trick to doing it, there's photographs of it in the book so you can see, but the trick to doing it well is that, I've punched this row here, and now I'm coming along with my needle tip, and I lay the edge of my needle tip against that row, and I punch so that they're lining up along it, and kind of using that needle tip as my spacing guide. And they're just kissing one another. They shouldn't be pushing against one another tight, because then it'll be too packed, but they're just kind of touching and just gently kissing one another, and that tends to fill it in nicely. If it's a finer yarn, you have to play around with it a little bit. For the most part, I find with my fine yarn that I use that I can punch the next row over for 1 or 2 rows, and then I skip a row. So occasionally I have a little bit of gap showing between them, and that just fills it out nicely for me. So with the fine yarns, play with it a little while. It's okay to have some gaps. With the thick yarn, the whole back should look like it's covered, but you do still have spaces in your rows.
Well, here's a troubleshooting question. I've tried punching, but sometimes I get a long space where the loops don't form. What am I doing wrong?
Oh, that happens a lot, especially when you're starting out. There can be a few reasons, and it's actually one of the troubleshooting questions in the book because it does happen a lot to people. There's a few reasons for it to occur. The most common is that your yarn has got snagged and you didn't notice as you were working. So either as you're punching, you landed up with your yarn kind of inside your hand, so you're restricting it, or it lands up under your arm or snagged on the edge of your frame. Whatever causes tension on this as you're punching will affect how the loops are coming out. And that's why we always aim to have this nice and loose. And if there's tension, sometimes it'll look like you're still punching and it looks like you're making loops and you're going along merrily and thinking all is well. And then all of a sudden, sometimes it'll be quite a ways later, you'll realize that you've got this weird bridge of yarn happening. And that's often the cause, is that eventually it just pulls out those little loops there because they were never seated properly because there was tension on here. So that's usually the most common problem. Sometimes it's that people come up a little too high as they're punching. And it's easy to solve. You don't need to go and pull everything back out to fix that little bridge. You can just snip it in the middle, trim it back to 2 tails, and then just repunch that little section. And then just keep an eye. That's the thing I say most in class. Your yarn is caught. Your yarn is caught. I almost need it on recording when I'm teaching and going around because it happens a lot. So just watch that yarn isn't getting snagged. That's the most common problem that causes it.
Well, Simone, I think we could go on for hours. We got lots and lots of questions for you. Do you have any words of wisdom before we say goodbye?
Oh, I can't believe the time.
Other than buy the book, of course.
Yeah,
Lots and lots of these questions are answered in the book.
yeah, they are. They are. I think the biggest thing is to have fun with it. It is okay to make mistakes, have fun learning, ask questions. There's some great Oxford instructors out there. They will set you on the right path. And don't be afraid to experiment and to play and to make it your own. I think that's the biggest thing that I want to share with people. And it's fun. It's supposed to be fun, and it is fun. Have fun with it and enjoy it. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Simone, for taking time out of your busy, busy, busy life to talk to us about your book.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah. So a few notes for everyone before we end today. This is our 4th webinar. Thanks to the pandemic, we all learned new skills. And we at Rug Hooking Magazine started this webinar series so that we could still visit with you and send you wonderful rug hooking information. Even if we can't get together right now, you can still click into our webinars for some fun and interesting rug hooking personalities. Check out the webinars that started it all, the 2 Celebration 30 virtual parties that we held in lieu of Solder Village Rug Hooking Week last year. The pandemic kept us all at home, so we created a virtual show so we could all gather together and celebrate celebrations. Then last fall, we launched a new book, Tattered and Timeless, from the Old Tattered Flag. Be sure to check it out for some country charm from Julie and Carol. And of course, this book launch with Simone. This won't be the last, so keep your eyes open for more to come. And finally, a great big thank you to everyone for coming to our online events. Thanks, Simone. Thanks to everybody watching. To everyone who's virtually attending, I miss you all. Someday soon, I hope, we'll be able to go to rug shows and hook-ins again. Until then, stay healthy and happy, and keep on hooking and keep on punching. See you all soon, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.